have been looking at factoring, and now what we're going to do is look at simplifying radical expressions. So we are simplifying radical expressions using a new formula called the quadratic formula. And in order to be able to use the quadratic formula, we need to be able to simplify radicals. So we kind of go backwards for a second and we look at simplifying radicals. So here are your perfect squares in order from 1 to 15. Okay, we have previously talked about some of this vocab, but we're going to just reiterate it a little bit further. A radicand is the monomial expression under the radical sign. A radicand is the monomial expression under the radical sign. The word simplify means to find another expression with the same value. It does not mean to find a decimal approximation. To simplify means to find another expression with the same value. It does not mean to find a decimal approximation. The radical symbol indicates a square root. And in general, it's important to know that the square root of x squared is the absolute value of x for all real numbers. We have two techniques to help us simplify. We have multiplying and dividing. So there are two techniques to help simplify, multiplying and dividing. If you have two numbers multiplied together, you can rewrite that number as its multiples. So like the square root of 8, for example, is the same as the square root of 4 times the square root of 2. You could check that on a calculator if you wanted. So if you took like the square root of 8, you get 2.8-ish. If you take square root of 4 times square root of 2, you would get a similar value. You're welcome. Alright, so what we're going to do today is simplify using those two techniques. So we have the square root of 25. 25 is actually a perfect square. So since 25 is really the same as 5 squared, the squared and the square root cancel each other out, and the square root of 25 is 5. Seven is prime, so the only numbers that multiply to 7 are 1 and 7. So the square root of 7 cannot be simplified. It is in simplest form. So we have the square root of 144. 144 is a perfect square. So it is the same as negative the square root of 12 squared. So the square root and the 12 cancel, leaving you with negative 12. If you have a plus or minus in front of your square root, it tags along. The square root of 9 is really the same as the square root of 3 squared. So since 9 can be rewritten as a perfect square, then we can say that this is equal to plus or minus 3. Okay, the square root of 121. Well, 121 once again is a perfect square, so that becomes plus or minus 11. The square root of 25 over 81. The square root of 25 is 5. The square root of 81 is 9. So the square root of 25 over 81 is 5/9. Yes. After you turn in that other thing to me. Okay. And then, thank you. For the last ones, we have the square root of 147, and we have the square root of 605. So the square root of 147, so you want to look at 147 and say, okay, what numbers multiply to give me 147? So 147, although it may not look like it, is actually divisible by the number 3. So 147 is the same as the square root of 3 times the square root of 49. So what we're doing when we simplify is either looking for a prime number that divides into it. So your prime numbers are 2, 3, 5, 7, 11. Or you're looking for a perfect square that divides into it. So 49 is a perfect square. The square root of 49 is 7. So we can rewrite this as 7 square roots of 3. So the square root of 147 in simplest form is 7 square roots of 3, because 147 is the same as 3 times 49, and the square root of 49 is 7. So that is what our goal is. It's supposed to take a large square root and rewrite it as a simpler one. So 605. Well, anything that ends in 5 or 0 divides by 5. So what I would do is take 605 and divide it by 5. And we get 121. So 121 is a perfect square. So that's 11 square roots of 5. So as we work through and simplify these, that next page in your packet is your homework. So you're doing that very next page in your packet. You're doing 1 to 24. And you have the next 20 minutes to do those. Remember, I want no decimals. So no answer should have decimals. All of your answers should either be a whole number or a whole number and a square root multiplied together.